Let's talk to one of the MPs who, frankly, I'm saying is a hero in terms of trying to get us back to normal life. One of those who has voted against government measures for the likes of the lockdowns and the tier restrictions. So Desmond Swayne, he's the former International Development Minister, Tory MP for New Forest West. Good morning to you, Desmond.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Lots of hope yesterday. We found out, more than 24 hours ago now that the vaccine was on the way. But as I was just saying, there's quite a lot of concern that there seem to be an awful lot of people in government, in the scientific and health world, and indeed, certainly on social media, people who seem to think that having a vaccine, even once it's rolled out, even to the most vulnerable or even to everyone else, that somehow we should still have major restrictions on how we go about our daily lives, whether it's vaccine certificates as passports or indeed still wearing face masks. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a bit depressing, really, how all the hopes that have been placed in a vaccine to be told that actually, hold on a minute, all sorts of restrictions will persist. And indeed, that the vaccine might be the passport for you to retrieve some of your civil liberties. And if you don't have that passport, those liberties will be denied to you. I think that's a very dangerous message to put out that plays into all those conspiracy theories and will make the desire to have the vaccine even more problematical. In my view, I think that the government needs to engage with people to sell the vaccine as a great liberator to people, line up the cabinet first and their loved ones and give them the vaccine, and then get all the lovies and the icons of popular culture out on the airwaves explaining what a wonderful liberating thing it is. I think we need a bit more optimism and a bit less of it's still going to be miserable for a long time. Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point of going and getting it?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And there are lots of people saying, and even Jonathan Van Tam saying yesterday, if you don't get it, you don't get protection from it. But look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe it's a hoax. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm quite happy to get any vaccine that I should be getting, or give my child any vaccine I should be getting. Certainly would want my parents in their late 70s to be getting the vaccine, and be on that, their late 70s, so not on the first tranche, but certainly in the second wave. However, I suppose I would question whether I would need the vaccine, given that I have had COVID myself, as my husband, my daughter, and brother, and various other people as well, whether we would need to get it. Now, it seems to me that is a choice that I can make based on the evidence available to me as a free person. I don't necessarily want people either requiring me to have it, or indeed that I'm not able to access services or get on a plane or whatever because I haven't chosen to have a vaccine. That's a very dangerous, slippery slope to go down, isn't it?
It is. I'm one of those people who would work on the principle, if it's free, I'll have one too. I'll barge the queue to get there first. But for months, people have been writing to me, terrified at the prospect that it will become compulsory. And I've written back to them saying, don't be ridiculous. This is absurd. We're a conservative government. We wouldn't dream of any such thing happening. That would constitute an assault under our existing law. It would require a primary legislation. And there's no chance of my colleagues voting for any such thing. But then in the last few weeks, we've had this concept of a passport put to us. So actually, only if you get the vaccine will you be able to go to a pub, catch an aeroplane, go to the cinema, and do all sorts of things. And I think that is a deeply insidious form of coercion, which, as I say, plays into the hands of all those conspiracy theorists who've been warning about this. I think you've got to persuade people to have a vaccine and not coerce them in any way at all. Of course, there's a philosophical argument to have about whether our rights are fundamental and inalienable, or whether they are a quid pro quo with certain responsibilities, one of which might be having vaccines. And of course, I'm used to having to produce my yellow fever certificate when I go to certain countries that require that. But I think we don't need to trouble the philosophers about this. The reality is that we can get the herd immunity we require on a purely voluntary basis. Most of us will have the vaccine, and that will do the trick.
And that should be enough. I mean, in terms of this idea that we, carry on wearing face masks and all of that. I mean, I spoke to the Education Secretary a bit earlier about getting face masks out of schools. That would be my number one priority. But having to wear them in supermarkets. I mean, there was some talk at one point of us following suit some of the European countries who have genuinely insanely, I mean, properly insanely ordered people to wear face masks in the open air. I mean, that's actually actively bad for you, let alone going to save lives. There does need to be a general overall calming down of the hysteria, does there not? Because there has been hysteria over this, and almost a sort of a race for people to virtue signal the most they can do to show they're a good person wearing a mask and not, I've not seen my family for 6 months. I've not seen my family for 2 years. That's how much I love my grandmother. We've got to have a return to sensible, calm debate and sensible, calm risk assessment about our lives, don't we?
We do. I voted against face coverings, and I regard them as ridiculous, and the evidence for them as so marginal as to be not worth it. But I think you've put your finger on a vital point. The fact is that the government's scenario that was accepted last week in the economic projections is based on the OBR forecast, central forecast, which predicated that the vaccine would not be generally available till the middle of next year. And that's why I think we shouldn't set aside for any moment our need as the focus of political activity to try and find a way of living with the virus whilst returning to normal life for the most part. And I think that has to be the central focus of government activity. And that starts on the 16th of this month with the government reviewing the tier system and where people are in the tiers. I think we've got to be much more realistic about trying to get back to normality before the vaccine is generally available, because it may take some time.
Absolutely. Again, I think, yes, rollout of these things rather different from the perhaps the fanfare we had yesterday. So Desmond Swayne, again, I think you've been doing a valiant job trying to keep people's sanity in check, and I salute you. So thank you very much indeed for that. That's